Welcome into this Tuesday. It is Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for waking up with me each and every weekday morning. And a little bit of a shorter show today. I got to get out of here and head over to the Illinois State Capitol because today's the beginning of fall veto session where we've got a lot to tackle. But let's start off this Tuesday morning with the latest in litigation against some Illinois gun laws. We've talked a lot about the ban on certain types of semi-automatic firearms and magazines and how that case is still proceeding in both the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, but also back in the Southern District of Illinois, where you've got Judge Stephen McGlynn still possibly going to enter a ruling on the vagueness challenge. So that all centers around the state's gun and magazine ban, while we also have the ongoing issues of the registration that's ongoing. But that's not the only law that Illinois has in place impacting firearms that's being challenged. You've got another challenge that's coming from the gun manufacturing and gun industry groups against the state's law that says that the private actions can be brought against the firearms industry for a variety of things. So this is the latest in that particular law because, of course, that once it was signed, it was instantly challenged, and that was earlier in the summer. But just as recent as last week, you have the state filing for a motion to dismiss. Before we read some of that motion to dismiss, let's go ahead and hear what the state had to say whenever they ultimately enacted this law. Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker, followed by Attorney General Kwame Raoul, laying out why they think that private actions need to be brought against firearms industry actors when it comes to litigation, holding them liable for a variety of alleged activities. Again, here's Governor J.B. Pritzker. This is last summer, if you recall. We talked about this weeks and months ago.
We hold opioid manufacturers accountable. We hold vaping companies accountable. We hold predatory lenders accountable. Gun manufacturers shouldn't get to hide from the law, and now they won't be able to.
So again, the governor signing that in front of a raucous crowd of gun control advocates up in Chicago, and on the stage with him was Attorney General Kwame Raoul, Senate President Don Harmon, State Representative Jihan Gordon Booth, the Lieutenant Governor, and various other individuals who are, of course, gun control advocates. But here's more from the governor and then Attorney General Kwame Raoul, and you'll also hear from Jennifer Gahn Gershowitz.
Now, I want to make sure, because, you know, we've got folks in court cases who tend to use what I say. It is important to know that this law in no way targets those in the firearm industry who operate in a lawful manner. What this law does is clarify that the firearm industry, like any other business, must comply with the Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Practices Act. The legislation establishes that the firearm industry members who knowingly violate the law and endanger the public when selling firearms, for example, by not taking already required steps to prevent sales to straw purchasers, are liable for those irresponsible practices. It prohibits marketing that reasonably appears to support unlawful paramilitary and unlawful private militia. And it reminds gun industry members that you cannot market to our kids.
We do not tolerate automobile manufacturers touting the effectiveness of its latest model to mow down a crowd of people. We do not tolerate a steak knife manufacturer that advertises the cutting effectiveness of its blade for attacking people. Yet gun manufacturers use messages like "forces of opposition bow down," or "consider your man card reissued," or "use what they use," to appeal to those seeking tactical combat weapons used by the military.
With that sentiment of, trying to characterize a certain firearms manufacturer advertising a particular way, they seem to run up right against the text of the Second Amendment and the constitutionally protected activities of the Second Amendment. Somebody even in the chat this morning saying that this law violates PLACA, which I forget what the acronym is, but essentially it's, protecting legal and constitutionally protected commerce, like the firearms industry. I mean, it's Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, so on. But with the law that was signed over the summer, and you heard the proponents there, opponents quickly filed suit. And you have this case playing out in the federal courts, where you had the case filed earlier in this summer. You had some motions that were, throughout the following weeks. But then last week, you had the state motion to dismiss, saying that the plaintiffs failed to bring a claim. And the plaintiffs responded to that promptly with a motion for preliminary injunction, and even with some of the other notices here, the actual deadlines have shifted because of the latest motions in this case. But let's go ahead and take a look at what exactly is going on here with the case that has some of the latest filings from last week. And you've got Attorney General Kwame Raoul's motion for the case to be dismissed. And looking at the overview, the outline here, the table of contents, really gives you a sense of just what exactly they're looking to argue. They say that the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the plaintiffs in this case, unlikely to succeed on the merits of their challenge, they say. The act cannot be enjoined because of PLACA. And again, that's the Protecting Lawful Commerce Act. NSF does not have a private right of action. The act is consistent with PLACA, the state claims. The court should decline to issue the advisory opinion that NSSF seeks regarding PLACA's predicate exception. There you go. Predicate meaning something that it prompts an action. It's for instance, if you get pulled over, there's a predicate that led to you being pulled over by police. They see that your taillight's out. That's the predicate that leads to an investigation. But the Attorney General's office goes on to lay out, saying that it comports with the First Amendment, it comports with due process, it comports with the Second Amendment, it comports with the Dormant Commerce Clause, and the National Shooting Sports Foundation does not have standing for injunctive relief. So therefore, they say in the table of contents, and you can go through and read all of this yourself. If you're not familiar with Court Listener, you can seek this out and find it. But ultimately, they're saying that the case should be dismissed. Well, what about the plaintiffs here? What's some of their arguments? They have, responses that they're expected to be filing. And of course, you've got the notice of attorneys coming in, the amicus briefs that are coming in, and the various other things that are happening when it comes to the motions being laid out in this case, in particular with how they want to make this go away with a motion to dismiss, but also they're motioning that the preliminary injunction that the National Shooting Sports Foundation is seeking should be done away with. But if you look at some of the other docket information here, you'll be able to see that there was amicus briefs filed by Everytown for gun safety, gun control lobby groups. You see the amicus briefs being filed for Giffords Law Center and a variety of other gun control groups. And I imagine you'll see some amicus briefs filed on behalf of the plaintiffs' groups as well. But the judge yesterday ordered a motion to leave for amicus briefs, but also set and reset deadlines. So there's some actions that are going to be required to happen by November 20th. So that's another date that we got to put on the calendar here, November 20th. And this is just for the firearms liability lawsuit, all right? So we'll be watching this just as we're watching the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, just as we're watching the Southern District of Illinois Court on the gun ban and registry case, just as we're watching the Southern District case on the FOID card challenge as well, with some deadlines coming up. So we'll be looking at these things each and every morning here in Illinois as Litigation against gun laws continues, but could there be more gun laws? Looks like possibly starting today, fall veto session at the Illinois State House, and one measure that could come up could impact those who are subject of orders of protection and whether or not police are going to be required to confiscate firearms in those cases. That's just one of many issues that could come up during fall veto session, so we will definitely be looking at that here next. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. You can always find me. Just search Bishop on Air if you want to stay up to date with the latest. But of course, you can like and subscribe, comment below. What are your thoughts about all of these things and more? So definitely looking forward to hearing from you. So, shortened show today. It's because I got to get out of here and head to the Illinois State Capitol where you've got fall veto session starting today. There's only 6 days left of the scheduled veto session, which you've got 3 days this week and then 3 days starting November 7th. So that's 6 scheduled days where state lawmakers are going to come in and they're going to deal with a whole host of things. They, of course, could take up legislation to require that police confiscate firearms from individuals who are the subject of domestic violence orders of protection. So we'll likely hear that debated in committee and then brought forward. But you'll also, this is veto session. There's vetoes that the governor made, and whether or not legislators are going to attempt to override those vetoes. Something we'll see play out in the days ahead. So again, you've got 3 days this week, starting today, where state legislators are going to be in session. I'll be there on the ground, tracking things. So of course, follow me on X, Bishop on Air. It's a great way to stay up to date throughout the day. But of course, we'll be talking about some of the highlights tomorrow morning here on YouTube and elsewhere. So be sure to like and subscribe for the latest. But what are some of the other things that could come up? Of course, you know, the orders of protection, police firearms confiscation bill. Some of the debate around that is, do police have the ability to store what could be a glut of firearms in some instances? That's a great question. Why is the current process not acceptable? Are there some pitfalls that the government is falling into and not enforcing current law? So these are obviously some debates that are going to be had. Other things that are going to be discussed, energy policy. You've got a moratorium in the state of Illinois on nuclear energy production. We have 6 different nuclear plants in Illinois across the state. But we've had a moratorium in place on new nuclear facilities for decades. Now, a measure that did pass with bipartisan support during spring session would have lifted that nuclear moratorium, especially as the governor has policies to get rid of coal-fired power plants by 2040 and to increase the number of electric vehicles on Illinois roadways. These are clearly some policies that cause concern with how reliable energy is going to be for a rural state like Illinois. I know I say rural. That's because 75% of the state is farmland. All right, so consider that. All you guys up there in Chicago and the suburbs, get it. You're real close together. But down in downstate, south of I-80, it's a lot of farmland, a lot of open prairie farmland. And it takes a lot to get from one place to the next. A lot of travel. And some people are concerned that if they're relegated to just battery-operated vehicles, that's not going to be efficient enough to help them haul hay around. It's not going to be efficient enough to help them get to work and then to the grocery store and to cart the kids back and forth from, one school to the next all across rural areas. So clearly there are some concerns, especially if you're going to have more and more demand on the power grid with fewer options like coal-fired power plants. So nuclear is one of those options to help fill it while people hope for, wind turbines and solar power. So clearly there's a bipartisan push to allow for more nuclear. Governor J.B. Pritzker talked a bit about this and other things when he was referring to fall veto session last week. And here's some of what the governor had to say in his review of what's coming up for fall veto session.
I think it'll be similar, but one of the challenges in the original bill, and it's what I wrote in my veto.
All right, we'll get this lined up again for you so I can get this turned up and go.
I think it'll be similar, but one of the challenges in the original bill, and it's what I wrote in my veto message, and I wish I could have mandatorily vetoed it, but it was just written in a way that I couldn't, is that it was focused in part on allowing large-scale nuclear plants to be built in Illinois, and that's not what the bill was originally intended to be about. We do want to see small modular reactors, as they become available, allow us to build factories, manufacturing, other things that need a lot of power in central and southern Illinois, where nuclear power isn't normally available and where you'd have to draw some significant transmission lines to those locations. You don't need that with SMRs. So that's what I want to see introduced. It hasn't been introduced, that, as far as I know, an amended bill, and that's what I would sign.
So the governor said last week he wasn't sure if there was a bill that was filed that would alleviate his concerns, but State Senator Sue Rezin, a Republican from Morris, has indeed filed a bill she says do allay some of the concerns from Governor J.B. Pritzker. So we could see a separate bill, not an attempt to override, but a completely separate bill that comes up to address the nuclear moratorium. So we'll see what happens there. Especially if it deals specifically with small modular reactors, which don't need the high power transmission lines to go all over the place and can actually be more close to a jurisdiction and so on. So we'll see. Another energy policy issue, high power transmission lines and whether companies like Ameren should have right of first refusal. Now, the proponents say this will save money. Opponents say it gives Ameren a monopoly. So we'll see how that debate goes. There's a few other measures, and the governor even talking about one in particular that he did an amendatory veto on that deals with food in public schools. Here's the governor.
Well, I mean, I'm waiting for the legislature to act on the vetoes that the amendatory and full vetoes that I issued. We've got some, we've worked out on one or two bills, some compromise that I think we can get the full legislature to support and bring it back to my desk. There was the halal and kosher bill, as you may know, and that's one where there were some technical changes that really needed to be made to the bill. That's the religious dietary laws, fulfillment of people's need for religious dietary meals. And so we believe that the issues have been worked out, and so I'm hopeful that bill will reach my desk.
So the governor, again, just a few other things that he's lined out that he hopes to see happen for fall veto session, again, which starts today. All right, so it's 3 days this week, 3 days starting November 7th, the final 3 days of calendar year 2023. And this is why that's important, because you have the Invest in Kids School Scholarship Program. That's a program that allows for individuals to give to a fund your private money, not tax dollars, your private money going into a fund that gives to families to be able to send their kids to a school of their choice. Get them out of a failing public school and put them into a thriving private school. And they would get a scholarship through the Invest in Kids School Choice Scholarship Program. Now, in exchange for that private donation, an individual can get a 75% Illinois income tax credit. This was all passed part of a compromise during the Rauner administration when they were changing a school funding formula. And the school funding formula allows for $350 million extra dollars each year to go to K through 12 schools across the state. Keep in mind, the average costs for K through 12 schools across the state is about $16,000. Up in Chicago, though, it's close to $25,000, $26,000. Somewhere in downstate Illinois, it's $6,000 or $7,000. So you could see the disparity there between how much it costs per student to go to a public school, depending on the jurisdiction. So part of the school funding reform was a measure to bring in the Invest in Kids School Choice Scholarship Program to allow for school choice. It's the only school choice program that Illinois has. But at the end of this year, the end of the calendar year, December 31st, it's set to expire. That's why here in the next 6 scheduled days of this calendar year, the final 6 scheduled days, there is a push to extend the Invest in Kids School Choice Scholarship Program. Governor J.B. Pritzker last week said he will sign such a measure if it gets to his desk.
Look, I've said that, and I think both sides are lobbying the various folks in the General Assembly. I will support it if it comes to my desk to extend the program in whatever form. I mean, I can't imagine it would show up in some form that I would be unwilling to. But again, the reality is that the legislature needs to go through this process, and I've said that from the very beginning.
Have you heard if those conversations are ongoing, if we could see one of those proposals come up?
I have not. I've heard that, just read in the news that there's some language that's been proposed, but I actually have not seen a bill introduced, and I think that's where the rubber meets the road.
And we'll see when that comes together. Will it be a 5-year extension? Will it be something that's permanent? A lot of the opposition coming from public school unions, where you've got the teachers union saying that it takes tax dollars away from the public schools, but I don't know how they could say that because these are private dollars going into the schools, and the K through 12 schools are already getting $350 million extra on top of what they got last year, and $350 million on top of what they got on the year before that, and $350 million more on top of what they got on the year before that. While the Invest in Kids School Choice Scholarship Program has a cap of $100 million in donations, not tax dollars, in donations, where the individuals could get 75% Illinois income tax credit. State Senator Chapin Rose and State Representative Adam Niemerg last week, they were asked about this. Adam Niemerg says that he's going to be pushing for the Invest in Kids School Choice Scholarship Program to be renewed.
Well, I'm going to be pushing the Invest in Kids Act very, very hard in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to hold Republicans and Democrats. I'm going to push real hard for both sides of the aisle on this issue, because we just saw the governor talked about the Invest in Kids Act. If he'd sign it, for the extension, if it came to his desk. We just saw him say that yesterday. So this is something that we need to do. We need to do it as a standalone, because if we do it as a standalone, then we show the people of Illinois are actually going to support this program with 20,000 kids on the waiting list, and it affects lower income families. It's a wonderful program, the Invest in Kids. So that's something I'm going to be pushing here in veto session.
So that's veto session upon us this week. We're going to see it pop up this week. Are there going to be committee hearings? Of course, I'll be asking state lawmakers from various circles about this while I'm on the ground. Obviously, it's a contentious issue for some, but State Senator Chapin Rose was asked about the opposition to this, the teachers' unions in particular, saying that they don't like this. Here's Senator Rose.
Is it the Chicago Teachers Union? To their president, I'd like to say, why do you send your kids to a private school? If this is so bad, president of the Chicago Teachers Union, why are you sending your kids to private school? This is about the kids. These kids, this isn't some theoretical program that might happen in the future. There are kids in schools today. I was at a rally last night at St. Thomas More Catholic High School. Those kids are going to have the rug pulled out from under them. So I really don't care what your partisan affiliation is or whether you're a teacher's union or not. This, at the end of the day, is about kids who are going to have the rug pulled out from under them, and I'm not going to do it.
And,
so clearly some passions behind all of this. And he's saying it's about the children. The teachers' unions are saying it's about the public dollars for education. So we'll see where exactly all of that goes. Something else that could come up for fall veto session, they have typically people on site lobbying. Sometimes they have tables set up with informational material about different types of things. You know, they might have like Future Farmers of America, for instance, or, you know, the 4-H program there. But got an email earlier this week about the Illinois End of Life Options Coalition. And they say that volunteers and staff are going to be on location in Springfield to talk about, quote, the urgent need for legislators to pass medical aid in dying legislation during spring session in January. So it might not come up in legislative form for fall veto session. You can see that they've already got the wheels turning here with the Illinois End-of-Life Options Coalition. It's the first I've heard of this group, but obviously it's some see this as medically assisted choice of death. And it says that information about medical aid in dying laws in 10 other states and Washington, D.C. Will be presented. Stories of Illinoisans who support medical aid in dying because they're terminally ill or lost a loved one who suffered needlessly without a gentle dying option. That's what they're saying in their statement. So we'll see what that's all about as well on the ground at the Illinois State Capitol. I got to get out of here. That's where I'm headed now. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with more recap of what's happened, but also we'll take a look at all of this when it comes to the gun litigation and where we stand on the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals and the Southern District of Illinois on a variety of things all playing out right in front of us. So, appreciate everybody tuning in, and be sure to check back tomorrow, and we'll have more. It's right here, Bishop on Air.